The Roommate, a scary story from Reddit. Subscribe to Scary Stories Vault for great videos to relax, study, or just enjoy. It had been a long day at work, and I wasn't in the mood for anything more than some quick takeout and a few episodes of a show before bed. I shared a small apartment with my roommate, Greg, who worked late shifts at a restaurant downtown. We both kept to ourselves, mostly, crossing paths only occasionally. It was one of those unspoken agreements where we didn't really delve into each other's personal lives much. I was fine with that. That night, as I unlocked the door and stepped into our dimly lit apartment, I immediately noticed something strange. The bathroom door was closed, and I could hear the faint sound of running water. My first thought was that Greg must be taking a shower. But that wasn't the weird part. It was the fact that the water had been running for hours. I'd gotten a couple of texts from him earlier in the evening when I was at work, around 7 p.m., telling me he'd just gotten home. Now it was nearly midnight, and the water had been running since I'd walked in the door. At first, I shrugged it off. Maybe he was just soaking in the tub, unwinding after a long shift. But 4 hours. That seemed excessive, even for someone who worked a physically demanding job like Greg's. I knocked on the bathroom door lightly. "Hey, Greg, you good in there?" I asked, trying to sound casual. No response. I knocked again, a bit louder this time. "Greg? Greg?" Still nothing. I leaned in closer to the door, trying to hear beyond the sound of the running water. It wasn't unusual for Greg to listen to music or podcasts while he showered, but the apartment was dead silent. No music, no rustling, just the steady stream of water hitting the tub. My mind began to race with possibilities. Maybe he'd fallen asleep? I pressed my ear against the door. The water continued to run, but there were no other sounds. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should force the door open. But I didn't want to invade his privacy. I figured I'd let it go, assuming he'd eventually come out on his own. I tried to distract myself by turning on the TV and flipping through some channels, but the sound of the water gnawed at the back of my mind. Time dragged on, and every minute felt like an hour. Finally, around 1 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and made my way to the bathroom again. The door was still closed, the water still running. "Greg," I called out, louder this time, knocking harder on the door. "Greg, come on, man, are you okay?" No answer. I grabbed the doorknob and tried to turn it, but it wouldn't budge. Locked. My stomach dropped. This was getting too weird. What the hell was going on? I grabbed my phone and sent Greg a quick text, asking if he was all right. I waited for a response, but after a few minutes, nothing came. No reply, no read receipt. It was like my message just vanished into the void. Panic began to set in. What if something had happened to him in there? I banged on the door with both hands now, yelling his name. No response, not even the sound of movement. With no other choice, I grabbed a small screwdriver from the kitchen drawer and tried to unlock the door. It took me a few tries, but eventually the lock clicked open and I slowly pushed the door ajar. The bathroom was empty. The water was running in the shower, but there was no sign of Greg. The air was thick with steam, and the mirror was fogged over. I hesitated, taking in the scene. The floor was wet, as if someone had just gotten out of the shower, but there were no towels missing from the rack, no clothes on the floor. The shower curtain was drawn, and as I reached out to pull it back, a chill ran down my spine. I yanked the curtain aside, half expecting to find Greg unconscious in the tub, but it was empty. Just the steady stream of water pouring down, swirling into the drain. "What the hell?" I muttered under my breath, feeling a growing sense of unease. I quickly turned off the water and backed out of the bathroom. I checked the apartment, hoping maybe Greg had snuck out without me noticing, but it didn't make sense. He hadn't taken his keys, his phone, or his wallet. Everything was still in his room, untouched. There were no signs that he'd even been in the apartment at all that night, aside from the running shower. I checked the clock. It was nearly 2 now. I sent him another text, asking where he was, if he was okay, but there was still no response. I even tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing the sound of running water in my head, like it was echoing through the walls of the apartment. I kept checking my phone for any messages from Greg, but there was nothing. I must have dozed off at some point because I woke up to the sunlight streaming through my window. Groggy, and still shaken from the night before, I decided to check the bathroom again. The door was closed, but the water wasn't running anymore. For some reason, I hesitated before trying the knob. When I did, it was locked again. Frustrated, I knocked on the door. "Greg, are you in there?" No answer. I grabbed the screwdriver from the kitchen again and started working the lock. It clicked open, and I pushed the door open. Empty. I stood there for a moment, staring at the untouched bathroom. The shower was dry. The air was clear. No steam, no wet towels, nothing. It was like the events of the previous night hadn't even happened. And that's when I noticed the note. It was taped to the bathroom mirror, a single piece of paper with Greg's handwriting scrawled across it in black ink. "Hey man, I'm staying at my girlfriend's place for a few days. I'll be back later this week. Don't worry about me." The pit in my stomach deepened. The note was so casual, so nonchalant, but something felt off. Greg had never left notes like this before. He always texted me if he was going to be gone for a while. Plus, the note didn't explain the hours of running water, the locked door, the strange absence. I grabbed my phone and called Greg again, but it went straight to voicemail, just like the night before. I tried texting him again, but there was still no response. Now, I was genuinely freaked out. What if something had happened to him? What if someone, or something, was in our apartment last night? For the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Greg's absence weighed heavily on me. I avoided the bathroom as much as possible, keeping the door closed and locked. But every night, I would hear the faint sound of water running, just like that first night. It didn't make sense. The pipes had never made noises before, and there was no reason for the sound to persist. On the 4th day, I finally decided to contact Greg's girlfriend to see if she knew anything. I wasn't sure what to expect. Maybe she'd tell me that Greg had been with her all along, and I was just overreacting. But when I called her, she seemed confused. "Greg? No, he hasn't been here for weeks. We've barely talked." My heart sank. I explained the situation, the note, the running water, the locked bathroom. Her voice grew more concerned as I spoke. "That doesn't make any sense. Greg hasn't mentioned anything about staying with me. Are you sure he's not just messing with you?" I wanted to believe that was the case, that Greg was just playing some weird, elaborate prank. But deep down, I knew that something far more sinister was going on. After hanging up with her, I sat in silence for a while, trying to make sense of everything. My thoughts spiraled as I pieced together the events of the past few days. The locked bathroom, the running water, the note, and now Greg's girlfriend didn't even know where he was. That night, I was lying in bed, staring up at the ceiling, my mind racing. The apartment was eerily quiet, and I found myself straining to hear the sound of the water again. It came around 3, soft at first, like a distant faucet had been turned on, but growing louder and louder and louder until it was unmistakable. The water was running in the bathroom again. I threw off my blanket and jumped out of bed, my heart pounding in my chest. I approached the bathroom door, but this time I didn't knock. I didn't call out for Greg. I just stood there staring at the door, listening to the water. Then, without warning, the water stopped. Everything went dead silent. I waited, holding my breath, listening for any sign of movement. But there was nothing, just the oppressive stillness of the apartment. I slowly reached for the doorknob, turning it with shaking hands. The door swung open, and once again, the bathroom was empty. But this time, there was something else. Written on the bathroom mirror, in the same handwriting as before, was another note. "I'm still here." And that was when I realized the note wasn't from Greg.